There's a sequence that a Cisco switch goes through when it turns on. It starts with the power on self-test program, or POST. This is stored on the read-only memory. POST will check important parts of the system, like the central processing unit, random access memory, and the flash file system. From here, the switch loads the bootloader software. The bootloader software is a small program stored in the ROM. It runs as soon as POST is finished doing what it needs to do. The bootloader initializes the CPU, which handles most processes including memory configuration. The bootloader starts the flash file system and loads the operating system. The operating system is the Cisco Internetwork Operating System, or Cisco IOS. When this happens, the control of the switch goes from the bootloader to the Cisco IOS. The Cisco IOS is located with the variable set in the boot environment. If it's not set, the switch will load the first image file it can find. Once Cisco IOS is loaded, the configuration file is found in the non-volatile RAM. Most switches normally have the same kind of indicators. Here are some of the indicators, however, keep in mind that there might be more to these. Take a look into the type of lights and what they mean. The router begins with a cold start, where it knows nothing about the surrounding networks. From here, the router does network discovery, where it talks to all the other routers and requests more information. Once all the routers have exchanged information and calculated their best routes, convergence is achieved. Port Status LED, or STAT. This LED indicates port status. Port Duplex LED, or duplex. This LED will signify half duplex or full duplex. Power over Ethernet, or PoE. This LED will indicate if power over Ethernet is supported or active. PoE is the process of supporting power over Ethernet cables. This is common for devices like wireless access points, cameras, and VoIP phones. When configuring a switch, some common things to learn include what the interface is like. It'll be like any other command line. Here's some tips on how to operate the command line. First, let's learn the 5 command modes. Within Cisco's IOS, there are 5 command modes. User exec mode is a very limited command line interface for unauthenticated users. It's usually noted by the arrow symbol. If you want to get into the next mode, you'll want to use the enable command. The next mode is the privileged exec mode, which is a command line with full administrative privileges. You'll note it by the device name followed by the £sign. Here you can do commands like show, configure, debug, copy, and many other commands that modify the system itself. Global configuration. Global configuration mode allows you to configure interfaces, routing, and virtual lines. It is apparent by the hostname followed by config and the symbol. If you want to go through your history of commands, simply tap the up or down arrows. If you want suggestions to a command, you can use the question mark to display any suggestions to a command you are currently typing out. Here's an example of this in action. And finally, you can shorten certain commands. As an example, instead of typing enable to access privileged exec mode, you can type en for short. For the rest of the series, I will do this with all sorts of commands except under special condition. Configuring switch management. Being able to manage switches remotely is important. To do this, you need to create a management VLAN and create a switch virtual interface, or SVI. To begin, go into global configuration mode. From here, jump into a VLAN number. For this video, our management VLAN will be VLAN 99. You can name a VLAN if you'd like to. We'll name this one management. You can do this by typing the name command in the VLAN configuration mode, followed by the name. You can verify this in global configuration mode with the do show VLAN command. When you get back to global configuration mode, we can begin configuring our management VLAN. You'll want to treat it like an interface. To do this, do int VLAN 99. From here, You want to add an IP address. This IP address will be the one we use to access it for remote management. For this exercise, we're going to be using 192.168.1.11 with the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. For this command, you're going to want to type IP add in the interface configuration mode, followed by the information that I gave you. It'll be the IP address and then the subnet mask. By default, this interface is not up, so you'll need to activate it. You can activate an interface with the command no shut. If you want to shut it back down, simply type shut in that interface's configuration. Next, you need to assign that VLAN to a physical port or interface. Interfaces can be accessed like so. Normally, they are these names. When shortened, they look like this. The command will be int. Then, you're going to want to do switch port mode access. And finally, you want to type out switch port access VLAN and then the number. Our management VLAN is on VLAN 99, so you'll want to put 99 here. We can exit after this. Next, we need to configure a default gateway. To do this, go into global configuration mode. From here, type IP default gateway, and then type the IP address of the default gateway. This is probably going to be the default gateway. From here, you've set a default gateway. Now would be a good time to save our progress. Normally to do this, you have to go into privileged exec mode and then type copy run start, which is short for copy running config startup config. If you want to check out the switch virtual interface, type do show IP int brief. This is going to be the last time I mention this. If you type do in front of a certain command, it'll allow you to execute it from global configuration. This is what I do for most of my commands that can only be executed in privileged exec mode. This makes it so that I don't have to switch between privileged exec and global configuration mode. Just keep this in mind that if I choose to put do in front of a command, it means that you'll have to execute it in global configuration mode. Duplex communication is important because half duplex communication is not efficient. If you want to change your duplex settings, you'll want to hop into the interface of your choice. From here, you can use the duplex command to choose half or full. The speed command is also important, as it allows you to choose the speed settings for the port in megabytes. You can use auto for auto negotiation if you need to for the speed command. This is important because we need to talk about cable types. When working in real life, and with Cisco Packet Tracer, you can connect switches to the following with a straight-through cable: servers, workstations, and routers. When connecting switches and repeaters together, use the crossover cable. Here are some commands you can use to verify switch port configurations. Keep in mind, you can throw do in front of all of these commands to execute them in global configuration mode, instead of going back to privileged exec mode. Let's talk about configuring SSH. First off, what is SSH? Well, SSH has a counterpart called Telnet. Telnet is used to remotely manage a system. However, Telnet traffic is unencrypted. If someone were to be listening to our traffic, then they could obtain a username and password. With SSH, our traffic is encrypted. Now, the first step is configuring an IP domain name. For this example, we're going to be using cisco.com. The command looks like IP domain name followed by the actual domain name itself. Changing your hostname. You can do this by typing hostname followed by the name you want to use for the device. Generating an RSA key. Cisco recommends a key length of 1024 bits. You'll want to enable SSH version 2 if you can. There are some flaws with version 1, so we want to opt into using version 2. You can do this with the IP SSH version 2 command. If you choose to delete your RSA keys, you'll want to type crypto key 0is RSA. For our SSH server, we're going to want to do local authentication. For this, you'll want to make a username and secret. A secret is the password for a user. The command will look like this. Fill in what you want for username and password. The final step is understanding the difference between physical connections and virtual terminal lines, known as VTYS. It really depends on the device, but there are usually 0 to 4 or 0 to 15 VTYs on a device. Keep in mind that 0 does count as one of the lines. So for the first part, it would be 5 lines in total, or in the second one, it'll be 16 lines. You'll want to secure all the lines, and to do this, you'll want to verify how many lines you have in the first place. To configure all of them, you'll want to do line, VTY, followed by the range. From here, you'll want to type transport input SSH to define that SSH is the only method to access this virtual terminal line. You'll also want to type login local to ensure that users authenticate with local logins only. You can verify your SSH configuration with the do show IP SSH command or do show SSH. Don't forget to save your configuration. Let's talk about some best network security practices. Here are some in better detail. Shutting down unused ports. This can be done by going into an interface's configuration and then typing shut into the command line. You can also do this in a range, and keep in mind that if you want to bring an interface back up, all you have to do is type no shut. If you want to close down a range, all you have to do is type int range and then the range itself. From here, you'll type shut and all of those interfaces will go down administratively. Let's talk about port security. Port security is used to ensure that people who plug into the switch are the people who are supposed to plug into it in the first place. To enable port security, hop into the interface you want to configure. Now keep in mind, you can also do this with a range if you want to configure an entire range for port security. From here, you can set up static secure MAC addresses, dynamic secure MAC addresses, and sticky secure MAC addresses. Keep in mind that dynamic secure MAC addresses will not stay in the system after it reboots. The only configuration that will keep MAC addresses are static secure MAC addresses and sticky secure. This is how you configure a static one. Go into the interface, type switch port mode access, and then type switch port security, and then switch port security MAC address followed by the MAC address. This is how you configure a sticky secure MAC address. Go into the interface, type switch port mode access, and then type switch port security, and then type switch port security sticky. That's it. Any addresses that connect will be applied to the system. There are 3 different port violation modes: protect, restrict, and shutdown. Protect will stop when the MAC address limit is reached and drop packets with a source address that does not belong. Restrict will do what protect does, but also create a syslog about the incident. Shutdown, the default violation mode, will shut down the port until it is opened up again by an administrator. If you wanted to change the switch port violation mode, use the switch port security violation command, followed by protect, restrict, or shutdown. By default, the maximum port security value for secure MAC addresses is 1. If you wanted to add more space for the port, go to the interface configuration and type switch port security maximum, followed by the value that you want. If you want to look at specific switch port security settings, type do show port security int and then the interface you want to see. You can also just type do show port security to see all the port security settings. The last thing we're going to talk about is network time protocol. Auditing is crucial, so crucial that we need you to have the most accurate time available. If you want to configure a master clock server, type NTP master and then a stratum value. The values you can choose are between 1 to 15. If the system is configured as a master but you don't specify the stratum, it will manually set it to 8. If you want to configure an NTP client, do NTP server and then the IP address of the NTP master. You can also verify the NTP information with do show NTP associations and do show NTP status. That's it for this episode. In the next one, we're going to be talking about VLANs.